So when after that point, it starts to move further away. Inevitably, you can't hold hands or be in conjunction with someone forever. You only have a certain amount of time, and then it moves on, and then the other phases of moving away and moving on from it. Once you've been energized, you go and use that energy, then you extend it, use it much until you've run out of the energy and you're as far away as you can, and you have to decide, wow, I need to get more energy. You're going back to the conjunction again. So each planet that goes around the zodiac is getting energy and giving energy and getting energy from each of the other planets and the relationships in its own period of time. So studying these in time we'll get to in the transits, but in the natal chart you've been born at a certain moment, and there's the planets are in certain positions, there's certain aspects between them, or certain degrees between them, or phases of the relationships, and they're all happening at that time, and they're all happening within you as your character. So the opposition marks the midway point of the aspect cycle. Two planets are as far away from each other as they can be. Their individual energy is as differentiated as they can be. Differences are apparent at the opposition. This is a moment of awareness, like the full moon. This is the moment of the greatest light in the aspect cycle. So when you're hugging and you're close together, you're just being there. Well, nice to be here, in your arms. When you're opposite, you say, you did this, I did that, there you are over there. It's not like we're together. There's a distinct experiential difference. So in any cycle, these are the noticeable peaks. So the conjunction is the strongest aspect, because it's the two energies are being merged together unconditionally. Like, I'd say unconditionally, but they affect each other, and there can be limits of how it works. But the energies are mixing, and you have to get as much out of them as you can, or life is going to get as much out of it as it can. So there's just a few drawings. So once you got the conjunction and the opposition points, you can then see the waxing and the waning. After the conjunction, up to the opposition, the aspect is considered waxing. It's building up. It's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. When it's most apart, you can see each other clearly. So each planet can see distinctly each other. So it builds up to the opposition. After the opposition, it moves back to it starts waning and moving back from the greatest brightness back down to the new moon or the greatest darkness. So, and each planet does the same thing. It waxes and it wanes. So there are phases in understanding the cycles. If you put the I Ching in it, its solid line is the light and the broken line is for the dark halves, the waxing and the waning. Waning means moving, increasing the light, moving towards more clarity. And then from the greatest brightness, it starts waning and moving towards greater darkness or greater sensitivity. So this polarity, here's the terms I like to use. In the signs of the zodiac, we had freedom and responsibility. I, me, we, us. In the houses, we had subjective being and objective functioning. They are the main factors. In the aspect cycles, there's activity and awareness. So when there's a conjunction, it's at the peak of activity. When there's an opposition, there's the peak of awareness, because you can see the two sides and you have the two sides, and there's a perspective around. It's not active because the two sides are on different energies are on two different sides, but you can see it and you see the distinction, so you begin to understand and see clearly. So there's the oppositions relate to awareness, cycle of peaks of awareness. So just in your natal chart, do you have more conjunctions or more oppositions? This is already the basis of how the pattern types are described and interpreted. But the more conjunctions you have, the more active your chart's going to be. The more oppositions, the more aware you're going to have. But what is activity if there's no understanding? And what is understanding if there's no action? They're interwoven with each other. So just again, so we see it again. Still, the awareness thing. So this point of activity being the peak moment, the beginning of the cycle. Now, when we're born, planets are not always, they can be at any phase of the cycle. Some may be waning and coming to the conjunction. Some may be waxing and moving away from it or moving towards the opposition. And we're born with all these different relationships going on. And the relationships are between different planets and between the different levels of consciousness in our being, like between the different chakras going in our spine. They're all there. They just get pulsing in different ways. So, okay, if we're trying to understand the waxing, therefore, after the conjunction, you get together with someone, there's going to be the repercussions of action. So the whole waxing phase is based, I mean, once you've been with someone, you're energized by them. Energized can be positive or negative. It can be depressing, it can be positive, but it's still energized. The energy comes in, and then you're going to go on that energy. You know, yahoo, we got it together, we're going out to do things, and we're pushing it as far as we can, and finally, who cares? You're in the opposition. Okay, that's it. Let's get into something and become aware of what else there is to do. So the waxing is the repercussions of action. The waning is after you become aware, oh, everybody's in the room, or not everybody had the same conjunctions as me. You can see they're uptight, they're not there, they're not together. So you can see there's different energies here. You become aware of other energies. And you go, oh, I got to hold this together. I got to understand. I can't just push on where I am. I have to understand. And there's a needing, once you get an understanding, now, not all understandings are complete understandings. There's many misunderstandings. There's many, how much quality of understanding do we have at any moment or at any opposition? It happens. How much do we assimilate? How much do we experience? How much do we digest? Well, it's a changing commodity. It's hard to be exactly defined around these, but you can see these energies. So depending on your awareness, the awareness should be guiding your action. So depending on your awareness or lack of awareness at the opposition, the waning phase is the repercussions of that awareness. So if you've been doing good and you start to let your understanding direct your energy, you start toning down the big show or the awareness, and you start moving towards the next conjunction, towards getting back together, to recharging. If it's a negative understanding, you start your repercussions of the negative awareness is coming forward, is building up until towards a conjunction. When you have a bad attitude and you're coming with a bad attitude in a conjunction, you're not going to get the best energy of it. So it's almost like our ability to work with this is like the oil in a car that makes the engine run smoothly. When we're in touch with this, we can make these adjustments. We can make the most of our active moments, of our understanding moments. We can tap these the most, and the things run smoothly. So, but there's many, many things that can interfere with this, and this is coming into the kingdom or the world of aspects and understanding it. But this is seeing a clear way of seeing the phases. Okay, so that's the first cycle. Now the next point is there's the halfway points between waxing and waning. And when the halfway points are there, really half of the cycle, these halfway points are the squares. Okay, there's a plus square, waxing square, and a minus square, waning square. But everything on the conjunction half of anything on the conjunction half of the circle, that's activity oriented. Anything on the opposition half of the circle, that's going to be awareness predominant. So, like we had the daylight is greater, nighttime is greater, or above the horizon or below the horizon. Here we're going to have the active half of the cycle, or the awareness half of the cycle. And the squares are the stress factors that come when you're switching from the activity to having to become aware, or from the awareness having to become active. So we start acting, and then we start pushing things, and we start hitting people, hurting people, or affecting other people, and we're having to adjust our actions so it's not affecting other people. And then it can build up to see, well, it can go this far. If we don't, other people start opposing us and fighting us. And we have to understand that, and then we kind of go back and we got to recharge at a certain point where we understand what everybody's doing. But still, if we want to get more energy, we're going to have to make some stress and extra effort to get it for ourselves. That's the waning square, so we can get back to the next conjunction. So I'm just going over this. You can look at these things and go over them in sequence and figure them out for yourself later on. But I'm just going through this to just lay a foundation of understanding. Working with them is a little simpler than this, but at other levels, when we get into timings and transits and especially progressions, these phases come into these phases, we start to use them more lucidly. So, okay. Where are we here? Yeah, so we have the conjunction half, we have the opposition half, the waxing and waning square. And so the conjunction half based on activity. Everything on a conjunction, if all your planets are on a conjunction half and there's no oppositions, you're on go in your own style, in your own way. If you have everything's oppositions, it's going to be hard to be specific and get any one thing done. This is I think this is a more descriptive one here of it. So we have, there's two squares, and generally in astrology, I mean, oh, that's just square this, that's just square that. There is a difference between the two squares, and it's the waxing or the waning. The waxing square, moving away from the planet after the conjunction, is stressful repercussions of action. You're pushing, and you're having to you're running into stress, you're running into interference. You have to make an extra effort at the square to be able to make an adjustment so it can affect other people, and you become more aware of its effect on others, rather than just that you got to get it out of you. Then once you have that awareness of how to move in context of other people, at a certain point that becomes inert or boring or whatever, and you get a certain understanding, but then you have to grow out of it. And at the waning square, there's the repercussions of that awareness. We all decide the group's only about this, and then, well, wait a second, I got something more I want to do, or I got to get more into this. So there's an extra effort required at the waning square to push to get back to the next conjunction, to go on to the next conjunction, so you're not just caught in an old understanding or a limited understanding or a negative understanding. So while we have the pulsing between activity and awareness, we have the stress factors of moving from one to the other and back again.